Welcome to the Land to Lots podcast, powered by Launch Development Finance Advisors. And now your host, Carter Froelich.
Welcome everybody, this is Carter Froelich, and we're glad to have you join us today for the Land to Lot podcast. And today we're going to be talking about the 10 questions that we believe our clients should be asking us when they're thinking about doing a special purpose taxing district. The first question, and this is really not a question, but it's more of a statement that I like to talk to our clients about to bring them back to reality to some degree. Because a lot of times clients come to us, they want to have a meeting, they want to figure out how they can finance their public infrastructure with bonds that at the end of the day they're not going to have to pay back. And if you're curious on a little bit more about that, I encourage you to go back to our very first podcast where we talked about how to borrow money that you don't have to pay back. In the first meeting that we have with our clients, what I like to do is to bring the client's expectations back to reality. And the reality being that special purpose taxing district financing, regardless of what state we're working in and what kind of bonds we're using, will assist in the financing of your public infrastructure, but it is not a panacea. It will not finance all of your infrastructure. You will have to put equity in the project. You will have to come up with other borrowing sources. This is not a silver bullet that is going to solve all of your problems. Even though that is not a question, that is what we really open up with for our clients so they understand that special district financing, while a valuable tool, is not going to solve all their problems. And more importantly, it's not going to make a bad project a good project. This is strictly financing. Jumping then into the first question that clients should be asking, they should be willing to tell us what their business plan is. And in fact, we think that this is the absolute crux of the transaction. And the question that we ask our clients is, and we call this our DOS question, and I take that from Dan Sullivan at Strategic Coach, but it's dangers, opportunities, and strengths. So the first question that we put to our clients is, assuming we're meeting 3 to 5 years from today, what has to have happened for you to feel that this project was a success? And then we stop. And we let them go through the litany of everything that has to have occurred for them to feel like this project is moving forward. And it could be everything from, I've got to get it entitled, I've got to get my zoning, I've got to get a land planner, I need an attorney, I've got to get my development agreement done. There is a lot of things that have to happen before we can start moving dirt on a master plan community. But we do this is because we need to understand where our client currently is and where they're going. If we don't know where we're at, how do we know how to get from point A to point B? So the first thing, where are we at and where are we going? The second follow-up question that we ask as it relates to their business plan, if they're not telling us that, is, in order for us to be able to get you to where you need to be, what are the challenges that you need to overcome to move this project forward? Then we'll sit down as part of the conversation and make a list of everything they give us. Follow-up question. What are the opportunities that we need to know about or that you need to be able to seize and optimize for you to be able to move this project forward over the next 3 to 5 years? Last question, what are the strengths that you have as an organization that we should be aware of as it relates to moving this project forward? After we have gathered all of this information through our plan and process and our DOS conversation, we're able to discern all of the obstacles that we as consultants are going to need to be able to address and to consider as we are handcrafting a financing strategy for our clients. And we have found, and I've been in this business for 37 plus years, and I haven't seen any other consultants even asking our clients necessarily, what their goals are as it relates to this project. What are their dangers? What are their opportunities? What are their strengths? And this is the first place that we start. The other question that we ask and that we need to know is our client nominal dollar driven in terms of return on their project, or are they IRR driven? Most of the time they'll say, yes, I want both of those. And we'll say, no, you only can have one. Do you want nominal dollars, meaning do you want the reimbursements coming back to you to be the biggest amount of money, irregardless of the time value of money? Or do you want that money coming back to you as quickly in the process as possible, in which case they're IRR driven. They only can select one. We force them to pick one. And then with that information, now we are armed with real information that we can use to bring a handcrafted financing strategy, or strategies, I should say, back to them. Tell them the pros and cons of each one of these financing strategies, and then let them pick which one works best for them in moving them in the direction of their goal. That is the second question that I think our clients need to be asking us or providing us the information on. The third question that clients should be asking is, what will our total tax property burden be vis-a-vis the competition once we have issued debt? This is the crux of special district financing. All of our clients are in the business of providing land and lots to home builders or commercial or industrial users. So at the end of the day, when they sell that house, when they sell that industrial pad, they need to know that when their homeowners are paying the tax bill, when their commercial users are looking at levying their CAM charges, what is the impact of that special tax on their end user? Because that will potentially impact the competitiveness of their project, and we do not want to put additional tax burden on our property if that is going to impede our sales velocity. So that is the first thing that we look at, and then based upon a tax burden that we believe is marketable in the current environment in which the project is located, we'll work back from that to show what the bonding capacity of the project is, given different bond structures, given different bond terms, etc. Very important question, and the clients absolutely need to ask that and be aware of, at the end of the day, once the bonds are issued, where their tax burden will be vis-a-vis the competition. The fourth question that they need to be asking is that once I do issue my bonds, and I haven't sold all of my property necessarily to the home builders, what is my tax burden going to be? Because the reason that this is such an important question is that a lot of times our clients have a tendency to be looking at, wow, I'm going to be able to issue bonds in this amount of money, and here's how much I'm going to get. And they don't necessarily equate that, hey, to the extent that I haven't sold or transferred my property to a buyer, I or my entity will be paying debt service on the unsold property. We call this the undeveloped land tax. As part of our structuring, we have the ability to borrow upwards of 3 years of capitalized interest to help the developer over this time period in which they're borrowing money, building infrastructure, selling pads and or lots to others, and during this time, to the extent that we have borrowed capitalized interest, the interest payments, the debt service on the bonds is being drawn out of the capitalized interest account. So anybody that owns property within this time period, be it the initial developer or a home buyer or home builder, is not having to pay the special district tax. The trick comes is that once that capitalized interest burns off, then to the extent that the developer has not passed on those obligations, they need to be prepared to write checks for the undeveloped land tax on the property that they own. So we really want them to have a clear understanding of what that burden is going to be and how that impacts their pro forma and their cash flow. Fifth question that I think is absolutely important, and the next two questions are somewhat tied together, but the biggest question is how can I maintain flexibility with the district financing to address changing market conditions? And this is a real loaded question that can get into a lot of detail. But I've been with some projects now for over 30 years. Some of these master plan communities are so large. The largest one that we're working on right now is in excess of 40,000 acres. We have seen a lot of changes in ownership, meaning different developers have taken over these projects. We've seen different city councils come and go. We've seen different underwriters come and go. We've seen different bond councils come and go in and out of these transactions or districts. But more importantly, we've seen changes in the tax code. We've seen changes in interest rate environments. We've seen changes in infrastructure costs. And all of these impact our ability and our to issue debt. The biggest value, if I can put that there, in helping our clients is to think through all of the things that may occur over the development period. And here again, I mean, we're talking 20, 30 years and 40, 50 years in some cases. But what can we do to create flexibility for us as it relates to this district to be able to issue more bonds, to issue fewer bonds, to have to set up a runway so that we can increase our tax rates if need be, decrease our tax rates, to add additional eligible infrastructure. How do we do that so that as the situations change, we can adapt without having to go back to any jurisdictional powers or agencies and ask them to change our operating agreements as it relates to the agreements that are in place? Because anytime we go back to talk to a jurisdiction or an agency about changing an agreement, they're going to have been thinking about things they would like to change as well. And the conversation is, hey guys, we are so glad that you came back to talk about your development, your financing agreement as it relates to the district, because you know that fire station you were going to build in year 10? Well, we would like you to build it now. And so there's a lot of bargaining that goes on anytime we have to go back to an amended agreement. So if we, in the initial stages of our agreement, can build in flexibility, so almost we have like an accordion. We can move it out and we can move it in, and we can play different tunes as we're moving it in and out without having to go back to the jurisdiction to change that agreement. That is incredibly valuable. And the way that we're able to craft a lot of that language, and here again, I am not an attorney. I've been on hundreds of deals, and we write a lot of language for attorneys to allow us to bob when we can bob and weave when we need to weave. That creates this flexibility. So that is one of the questions that I think the clients need to be able to ask. And once we have a good understanding of their DOS related to their project, we're able to custom craft that language give it to them and their legal counsel for incorporation into a number of the agreements. The follow-up question to that, meaning how do I maintain flexibility in the district, is on the other standpoint is what can I do to create certainty on the part of the jurisdiction or district so that I know that they're going to do what I need them to do when I need them to do it. And that's the second part and the second question they should be asking, because over the years we have learned a lot in dealing with jurisdictions, and the only thing I can say is I have a very healthy skepticism when it comes to jurisdictions and what they say they're going to do and what they actually do. So what we have found is that for those items that are very, very specific and that we need to have extreme comfort on is to include those in the financing agreement. And rather than using language such as may, the language is shall or will. And here again, legal counsel can talk about we can't force jurisdictions into a legislative act, but what I like to do is include very unambiguous language that says that jurisdictions and or districts will do things upon the occurrence of very objective, identifiable events, so that everybody is able to determine, has this condition occurred, yes or no? If yes, assuming we've met all the criteria, then we're able to move forward with certainty, with the bond issuance, with the reimbursement of costs, with the construction of facilities. This is huge, because the one thing that we as developers and home builders cannot tolerate is uncertainty. And to the degree that we're getting certainty and flexibility in this agreement, we're creating huge value. The rest of what we do, guys, let's face it, it's math. But every battle is won before it's fought, and they're won in the agreements by creating both flexibility on the part of the developer and certainty on the part of the jurisdiction. So the developers need, and I really ask them to ask us on how are we going to create that flexibility, and then the follow-up question, how are we going to create certainty so that we know that we can actually use this tool and it'll be used as all the parties had intended when it was initially set up. Because let's face it, I'm pulling out agreements that we did 30 years ago and to talk with the new city managers on why we should be able to do the financing the way we want to do it. And the beauty of it is it works 9 times out of 10. Next question. What if I wanted to borrow more money than the market will support? How can I do this? As you may recall from our previous podcast, we talked about this. But one of the things that we're always working into as part of our flexibility conversation is the ability for us to be able to go borrow more money than maybe what we feel we can pass on to the home buyers, understanding that when we have a revenue event, we will more than likely have to take some of that revenue and use it to pay down bonds. Where we see this most often is in the use of special assessment bonds, and this was something that's used quite prevalent in Florida with the A and B bond structure. But for instance, we may determine that the market will support a $20,000 per lot assessment. However, given the fair market value of our property, we're able to issue $40,000 a lot in bonds, use that money to build infrastructure with the understanding that once we go to sell that lot or that home, that we will pay off what the market won't support, in this case, $20,000 a lot, using revenue from our transaction to pay that down. So really what we've done is we've got some bridge financing through the special assessment bonds to build that infrastructure. And then we're better matching revenues with outflows. So when we have money coming in, we're paying off a portion of that. We're paying $20,000 of that $40,000 assessment off, and we're passing on $20,000 to the home buyer. So that is just one of the ways to do it. But here again, we are always looking at, and we have a whole list of depending upon what state we're working in and what kind of projects we're working on how we can potentially borrow more money than the market will support, knowing that we're going to, at the end of the day, pay down that debt and pass it on at a market acceptable level. That's going to do it for this portion of the most important questions our clients should be asking us. Stay tuned next week for the remainder of our questions.
You have been listening to the Land to Lots podcast with Carter Froelich. Tune in next week for the next episode.